Hey, my name is Jesus Castello, and in this video we're going to be working together in a Ruby programming project. What project are we going to work on? It's the ls command. We're going to make a clone of the ls command, and we're going to make our own version of it using Ruby. So the ls command, as you're probably familiar with, is a Linux and Mac command that you can use to get a list of files inside a folder, right? If you just type ls, it gives you the files for the current folder, as you can see here. And if I type ls-lh, it gives us a list like this with extra information like the file size, right? Information like the file owner and the file mode or permission and the last modification time, the last time that this file or folder was changed. So that's what the ls command is, and I want to reproduce this, a version of this, using Ruby, and I think that's a very interesting Ruby project to practice your Ruby skills. Now let's get started. How do we start with a project like this? Well, since we already know what the features are, I like to start with the easiest feature and then build on top of that, right? So what's the easiest feature here? Is the list, like that, without extra information. Just the plain old list. So what I like to do is to just open IRB or Pry if you prefer, the same thing practically. And we're going to play around a bit before we actually start coding our program. And this is just to figure out what methods and classes we need to do this, right? So I know that the dir class in Ruby allows you to work with directories. That's what dir stands for. It comes from directory. And it has some methods like the glob method. So what the glob method does, it allows you to find files and folders inside another folder, right? That's what we want. We want a list of files and folders. And we can do that with this method. And this method, the glob method, needs one parameter. That parameter is your pattern, your search pattern. What files and what folders are you looking for? If you want everything, you pass an asterisk. That means give me everything in the current folder. And as you can see, what I get is an array of strings, where each string represents a folder or it represents a file, like this one, right? So this is going to be like our base or starting point for this application. And now that we know this, we can move on into creating an actual Ruby file. So I'm going to exit IRB for now. And for this presentation, I'm going to use the BI editor because it will allow us to very quickly test this application. So I'm going to call this ls.rb, like this. And just drop this in there, or this we already tested that it works, right? We can do puts that and then save. I'm going to exit using Ctrl+C, so it puts the process, it suspends the process. So now I can test the program like that, and it's working as expected. Because we tested it, right? We tested that this works. And we get our list of files for the current directory. and we can check that this matches with this list, right? The only difference is that this all in one line, and this one line for each file or directory, right? Now another thing that ls can do is filter. So you can do like mp3 like that, and then we can filter all of the files that match this pattern. So if you only want mp3 files, we can do it like that. If we only want Ruby files, we can do *rb, right? And that's how we can filter files. It's very useful, especially if you are on a big directory, in a big folder, you have a lot of files. You can filter your files like that, so you can find exactly the files you are looking for. So right now our Ruby program doesn't do this, doesn't allow for this filtering, right? Doesn't allow for this filtering yet, because we hard-coded the search pattern. So by that I mean we have this start. That means look for everything. It doesn't take into account the fact that we want to filter. So how do we fix that? Well, we need to read user input in some way. So first I want to extract this into a variable so we can change this value. Let's call this directory. And now I'm going to replace that by directory. And then what I'm going to do, this is our default value, right? This is our default value, and now we're going to check if the user wants something else than the default. And the way to do that is to use this constant argv. And this is a constant which is an array that allows you to read the options that the user is giving to you. So if the dash LH or any other option that the user is giving to you can be read using this constant. So for example, if we do if argv 0, we can check if there is something in there, and if there is something in there, we are going to assume that's the directory pattern. So we're going to do this star plus whatever this is, whatever the user inputs, and that's going to become the directory. So let's test this. Let's test. I'm going to do ruby ls.rb, and that's still working. Now I'm going to filter Ruby files. That works. I'm going to filter mp3 files, and that works. Very good. I like that. Now at this point you might notice that we have to say Ruby every time, right? But when you use the regular ls command, you don't have to do anything special. You don't have to put anything in front, right? So what can we do to change this? We can add a special line, a special command as the first line. Let me show you what I mean. This line right here, this is like a special type of command that Linux and Mac, the shell, is going to be reading this, and now it understands this is a Ruby program. It understands that this is Ruby code, so it's going to read this, process this with Ruby, and we don't need to call Ruby every time. So now instead of having to do Ruby ls.rb like this, we can remove that and just do this. Oh, and we have to do one more thing. We have to make this file unexecutable, and you do that like this. And this means give it the executable permissions. Give it the ability to be run by itself. Other ways you get is permission denied. Now it will work. As you can see, it is a Ruby program, and it works without having to say Ruby every time in front of it. And if you rename it, you can also make it use ls if you wanted. But for now, I like this, so we can tell the difference between our program and the actual ls command, right? Let's quickly review what we have. First, we have this dir glob directory, and what this does is find the files and folders following a pattern. This pattern is by default everything, so every file and directory, and we give the user of this program the ability to enter his own pattern. So you can only search for MP3s or Ruby files or image files, anything that you want, right? It's filtering mechanism. And finally, we have this special comm, it's called a shebang, and what this is doing is telling the operating system what kind of file this is and how to run it, how to work with this code. Next, we have still a lot of things to do, right? Because so far we only have the basic listing and filtering, but we also want the extra information. For example, we might want to find out whether something is a file or a folder. I think that's a good next exercise. And we want to have these two modes, like ls, lh, this one mode, and this the regular mode, right? We can do this using this RGB again. So let's do that. We can do if argb 0 and argb 0 equals -lh, then we're going to remove this value with shift. So shift is an array method that removes the first value from the array. And the reason I'm doing that is because if we remove the first value, then we can also do the custom directory pattern. Now we want to set some kind of flag or something, so we know that we found this. And I'm going to do this long listing mode thing. Long listing equals true. See, that works. Then we need an if statement. If long listing, then do something else, then do the same thing we were doing before. Notice that both of these, the long listing and the regular listing, the short list of folders and files, both of them are going to need this. So let's put this into a variable. Let's call this file list. And then in here, for the short list, we just print it, file list. And now we can check that everything is still working like before. Like this, we can see filtering works, yes. And now for LH, and we get this error. Let's see what's going on. Undefined method shift for LH. I know what this is. We don't want to shift on index 0 because index 0 is the string, right? You don't shift the string, you shift the array. So that should fix it. Okay, this does nothing because, as you can see, the if statement is empty. I just put a placeholder method. I mean a placeholder comment in there. So what do we want to do in here? Well, what I like to do for the long listing, I like to print folders with an F. So we know, folders with a D for directory and files with an F for file. Let's do that. So to do that, we're going to go over our file list, and then do each file, and then do something in here. And what we need is the file directory method. This is going to tell us whether a file is a directory or not. If it's not a directory, then it has to be a file, right? That's my logic here. So let's check, and then I'm going to have a ternary operator. So a ternary operator is like an if-else, but in one line. It's like a shortcut version of if-else. If you're not very familiar with ternary operator, you can find some information in my site, rubyguides.com. I have an article where I explain that, and I also have a video of the ternary operator. Now, let's continue. What do we want to do if it's a directory, right? That's the first thing. Well, we want to print the D, then we want to print the file name. And that's used string interpolation. Else, this is the else part, we want to print F for file and the file name. And we're going to print it with puts. And that should be it. Let's test it. Let's see if it works. Hey, it works. We can see D for Ghost Game, which is I know it's a directory. Ruby extension is also a directory. Of course, ls, RB, the file we're working with, is a file. And of course, the MP3 folders are also files. And we can also test this in combination with our filtering, right? With MP3 filtering, and we can see this also works, right? And if we remove the flag, the LH, this still works, and we don't get the extra information. So as you can see, we're making a lot of progress. And what we did here is just check whether or not the -lh string is in there, in the command name. If it's there, we remove it, and we set this value to true. Now, another thing I would like to do is to print directory first, and then all of the folders. To do that, we can use the partition method. Let me show you how that works. We can do directories, then files equals file list partition. How are we going to partition? We're going to partition based on whether a file is a directory or not. So we can reuse this code right here. And that should be it. Now, instead of printing the file list, we're going to print the directories first and then the files. So what's happening here is these are two arrays. These are two arrays, one for the directories and one for the files. Basically what it's doing is sorting them. When I put them back together like this, they are sorted, and the directories come first, and then the files come second. Let's test that. And it seems to be working, right? We get D, all of the directories, and then all of the files. This is different than before. Everything was mixed together, right? You can see DDF, DF. Now we have a bit more sorting, a bit more structure. We have first the directories and then the files, which I like it like that. I like it more like this. Feels more organized. It feels cleaner, right? This feature I would like to implement is to have file size. So if we do ls dash lh, you can see right there the file sizes. This column right here is all about the file size for this file, and for folders we get 4K. That's just the default size for a folder. It doesn't take into account the files inside the folder, only the folder itself, right? That's how it works. If you want to do that, we're going to expand our long listing. So this code right here, to be able to print the file size. So we have the letter, right? And now we want the file size before the file name and after the file type. So let's do file.size for file, and we have to repeat it right there, right? So it's on. So we have the file size for both the folders and for the files. That's why we have to have it both places. And we're going to improve this code later, so don't worry about that. Now we can see the file sizes, but this doesn't look as nice as this one, right? From the actual ls command. So these are bytes. By default, what you get with the size are bytes, and these are kilobytes. So what's a kilobyte? A kilobyte is 1024 bytes. So we have to divide by this number. So let's do that. We're going to come here and 24 and slash 24, right? You can see it's a little bit better, but now we don't know if this is what kind of unit this is, right? We need a K, this big K right there, so we know the unit. So let's do that, and you can see that having to change things in both places, it gets all really quick, right? So we're going to fix this after we get it to work. So you can see we get the letter now, so it looks a lot better. Now we know these are kilobytes, 4K, right? And we can see this match mostly the real, and the reason is a little bit bigger. So this 645, this 644. The difference because this rounding up the value. There's some decimal numbers that we're not seeing, and ls likes to round them up. I'm just leaving them like this for now. We're not going to bother with rounding up, but you can do that if you want in your own program, if you're following along. You want to use like the floor, or there is also the round method and the sale method. These are methods for rounding. So let's go back here and clean up this a little bit. So to clean this up, we need to pull out a file size. So this is going to be the file size. We can make this like that, and we can also pull out the file type. File type, and then let me take this and replace. Now we templatize this, we generalize our output, and that's how you remove duplication, by templatizing things by taking away what repeats and creating a sort of template. So let's do file size, and in here file type. And here, instead of having all of that, we just have the actual letter that we want. Okay, think that should be working. And it's not. We broke something because we get no output, right? Oh, yes, I forgot the puts. Forgot to print, actually print the output. If we don't print the output, it's hard to see what's going on, right? And there it goes. It's working. And you might notice that these are not aligned, right? There's a little trick you can do. You can do this pipe. This is called a pipe character. And then you can do column dash T. And that will align the columns for you. And that's starting to look really nice, right? We get the directories and files sorted, so they are grouped together. Then we get the size, and it's formatted like that nicely. And we get the actual file name. And of course we can filter, and we still get the file size and the file type. That's pretty nice so far, right? So that's you can add more to this if you want. You can add, there's a lot more you can add. If you look at this, you can add the file owner, you can add the file permissions, the file mode, you can add the file change time, the modification time. All of this information is available, you can access from Ruby this information using the file class and the directory class. All of that information is available. For example, if we go to Pry and we do file.stat, that's a useful one. We do that for intro mp3. There is a lot of information in here, as you can see. There is the file owner, there is the group owner, that's the file mode, and you have other information, that's the file size, the creation time, modification time. All of this information is available. You just have to format it, right? You have to format it and put it in whatever format you prefer. That's one of the nice things of making your own programs. You can make it look like you want. It doesn't have to be some random way. So let's take one more look at what we have done. We created this ls command using Ruby, and we can filter, we can get information, we can get just the list of files without the file size and all of that. And if we review the code quickly, we use this special command, or magic command if you like, to tell our operating system that these are Ruby files, is Ruby code. Then we have the default and directory. We're using this constant, Ruby constant, to check the options from the user. So we're using to check for LH flag, and we're using it to check for filters. And if none of those are there, we use the default, right? Then we use this glob to search for files and directories. And then if the user wants the long listing, we sort the directories and files using the partition method. Then we put them together again in the order that we want. And we get the file size. We divide, so we get the kilobytes instead of just bytes. And we use this directory ? method. This is called a predicate method because it returns true or false. And we use a ternary operator. The ternary operator is this. It's just like an if-else. And finally, we use string interpolation to templatize our output. And if the user just wants the shortlisting, we just put the array. So that's our Ruby project. Hope you enjoy it. If you did, please give me a like so I know that you like it. If you have any questions, leave a comment below. I will read your comments. I'll answer your comments. And if you want to keep learning and keep improving your Ruby skills, make sure to visit my website rubyguides.com. Have a lot of free tutorials in there for you. I also have my Ruby book in there that you can buy if you want to boost your Ruby skills. And also subscribe to the channel so you can keep getting more videos like this to keep improving your Ruby skills. Thanks all for watching. See you in the next video.